The Galactic Council's first contact protocol was considered flawless after 10,000 years of refinement. That was until they met humans. Ambassador Zixtal of the Artaxian Confederation stood frozen before the holographic display, his crystalline appendages reflecting the soft blue light of the emergency transmission. The message was simple, yet it defied everything he knew about spacefaring civilizations. Greetings from Earth. We come in peace. What made this message extraordinary wasn't its content. The Council had received countless first contact signals over the millennia. No, what stunned the ambassador was its origin. The signal came from a planet classified as Environmental Hazard Level 12. A Deathworld. Impossible, he whispered, his crystalline form vibrating with disbelief. Check the readings again. Izad, Venra, manipulated the sensor controls with practiced efficiency. Confirmed, Ambassador. The signal originates from the third planet of the Sol system. Environmental scan shows extreme temperature variations, powerful storms, tectonic instability, dangerous levels of oxygen, and, Venra paused, numerous apex predators. The ambassador's form pulsed with a mix of fear and fascination. In all recorded history, no sentient species had ever evolved to sapience on a level 12 world, let alone developed spacefaring technology. Such environments were simply too hostile, too unpredictable for complex civilization to emerge. Yet here they were, receiving a perfectly formatted first contact message in standard galactic code. Prepare the response team, Zixtal ordered, but triple the standard safety protocols. If these, humans, truly evolved on a death world, we must be prepared for anything. 3 solar cycles later, the Council's first contact vessel, the Harmony of Stars, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The ship's crew, composed of representatives from 12 different species, had spent the journey studying everything they could about Earth from long-range scans. Dr. Lyanna Mektari, the ship's xenobiologist, presented her findings to the assembled crew. Her feathered crest rippled with excitement as she spoke. The humans appear to be endothermic bipeds with remarkable environmental adaptability. They've established settlements in virtually every climate zone on their planet, from frozen wastes to scorching deserts. But how do they survive the constant disasters? Asked Captain Rickson, his tentacles curling with concern. Our scans show regular volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, hurricanes. That's the fascinating part, Lyanna interrupted. They don't just survive, they thrive. They've built cities that withstand earthquakes, weather control systems to predict storms, and they've even learned to harness their planet's volatile geology for power generation. The journey to Earth orbit was tense. The crew had expected to find a militant species, hardened by their brutal environment into aggressive survivors. Instead, their first visual contact with a human vessel was almost anticlimactic. The human ship was smaller than the Harmony, its design elegant in its simplicity. It carried no visible weapons, though the Council's sensors detected impressive defensive capabilities, and its hull bore markings that appeared to be artistic rather than militant. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Stellar Bridge," came the transmission. "Welcome to Sol. We're honored to make your acquaintance." The voice was calm, pleasant, and spoke perfect galactic standard. Another impossibility. The humans had apparently decoded and learned the language from the Council's own public broadcast beacons. Ambassador Zixtal took charge of the response. "Greetings, Captain Chen. I am Ambassador Zixtal of the Galactic Council. We are surprised to find such an advanced civilization in this system." There was a pause, then what sounded like a gentle laugh. "Because we're from a death world?" Captain Chen asked. "Yes, we decoded that classification from your public databases. It's been quite enlightening to learn how the rest of the galaxy views our home." The ambassador's crystalline form flickered with embarrassment. "You must understand our surprise. Your world is beautiful," Chen interrupted. "Challenging, yes, but beautiful. Perhaps that's why we develop differently from other species. We learned early that survival meant adaptation and cooperation, not domination. Over the next several hours, the human captains shared their history, how Earth's challenges had forced their ancestors to work together, to innovate, to find solutions where none seemed possible. They spoke of their greatest achievements not in terms of conquests or territorial expansion, but in advances in medicine, environmental protection, and peaceful space exploration. "We've made many mistakes along the way," Chen admitted. "Our history has dark chapters of conflict and environmental damage. But we learned from them. We had to. Our world doesn't forgive mistakes easily." The Council's preconceptions continued to crumble as they learned more. These Deathworlders had developed art, music, and literature. They had thousands of distinct cultures, yet had found ways to cooperate globally. They had developed technology that rivaled or exceeded the Council's in many areas, yet their focus was on healing and building rather than warfare. Most surprisingly, they showed no sign of the psychological trauma that the Council's experts had predicted would be inevitable in a species from such a harsh world. Instead, they displayed a remarkable ability to find joy and beauty even in adversity. The breakthrough came during what the humans call a cultural exchange dinner. The Council's representatives, wearing their protective environmental suits, watched in fascination as Captain Chen's crew enjoyed a meal together, sharing stories and laughter. "You see," Chen explained, noting their observers' interest, "living on a challenging world taught us something crucial: the importance of community. Every natural disaster, every environmental challenge, brought us closer together. We learned that our greatest strength isn't in our ability to endure hardship, but in our ability to help each other through it." Ambassador Zixtal found himself deeply moved by this perspective. "Your species is remarkable, Captain Chen. You've taken what we considered a curse, your world's hostile environment, and turned it into a source of strength and wisdom." "That's very kind," Chen replied with a smile. "But we don't think of ourselves as remarkable. We're just human. We adapt, we learn, we grow. And now we hope to share what we've learned with the galaxy." As the first day of contact drew to a close, the ambassador made an unprecedented decision. Instead of the standard century-long observation period usually mandated for new species, he would recommend Earth's immediate admission to the Galactic Council. "Your species has much to teach us," he told Captain Chen. "Perhaps it's time for the galaxy to learn that true civilization isn't measured by the gentleness of its cradle, but by the wisdom and compassion of its children." The human captain's eyes moistened slightly, another biological feature that fascinated the Council representatives. "Thank you, Ambassador. We look forward to building bridges between our peoples. After all, if we could learn to thrive on a death world, imagine what we can achieve together among the stars." As the harmony of stars prepared to return to the Council with its revolutionary report, Ambassador Zixtal made one final observation in his log. "We came expecting to find survivors hardened by an unforgiving world. Instead, we found teachers who learned to turn adversity into opportunity and isolation into a reason for connection. The humans have shown us that it's not the harshness of one's environment that defines a species, but how they choose to respond to it. Perhaps it's time for the Council to redefine what we consider a death world and what we consider true strength." 5 years after Earth joined the Galactic Council, Dr. Maya Rodriguez stood at the viewport of the terraforming station Gaia's Touch, watching the storms rage across the surface of Proxima b. The planet had been deemed uninhabitable by Council standards. Its harsh radiation, extreme temperature swings, and caustic atmosphere making it a close match to Earth's Level 12 classification. To Maya and her team, it looked like home. "Another atmospheric processor just came online," reported Dr. Kenzo Tanaka, his voice carrying the excitement that had become characteristic of the human terraforming teams. "That makes 15. The radiation shield matrix is holding steady at 98% efficiency." Maya nodded, her dark eyes reflecting the lightning that sparked through the planet's turbulent atmosphere. "What do our Council observers have to say about that?" "They're confused," Kenzo chuckled. Ambassador Zixtel's aide just sent another request for clarification about our methods. Apparently, they're having trouble understanding why we're not trying to eliminate the storms completely. Send them my standard response, Maya said with a smile. Sometimes the best way to tame a world isn't to break it, but to dance with it. The human approach to terraforming had shocked the galactic community, where other species sought to impose complete control over hostile environments. Humanity had developed what they called adaptive terraforming. Instead of fighting against a planet's natural processes, they'd worked with them, guiding and shaping rather than suppressing. Maya remembered the Council's reaction when they'd first proposed their method for Proxima b. You want to maintain the storm systems, they'd asked, their various appendages and sensory organs expressing disbelief in a dozen different ways. Modified. But yes, she'd explained. The storms are part of the planet's natural energy distribution system. Eliminating them completely would create worse problems in the long run. Instead, we'll redirect them, use them to help distribute moisture in moderate temperatures. The Council representatives had been skeptical, but Earth's success with their own hostile environment had earned humans the right to try their unconventional approach. Now, 2 years into the project, the results were beginning to show. Dr. Rodriguez called out Lai Wei from his monitoring station. You're going to want to see this. The first test plot is showing results. Maya made her way to the biology lab, where a live feed showed a small valley protected by one of their atmospheric processors. There, in soil that had been deemed too acidic for life just months ago, tiny green shoots were emerging. Earth plants. Asked Venera, the Artaxian observer who had become a constant presence in their lab. Not exactly, Maya replied. These are what we call pioneer species, engineered hybrids based on Earth's most resilient plants, but adapted to thrive in Proxima b's specific conditions. They'll help prepare the soil for other forms of life. The Artaxian's crystalline form shimmered with curiosity. But surely it would be more efficient to simply neutralize the soil chemistry completely. More efficient in the short term, perhaps, Maya agreed. But we've learned that trying to force an environment into a completely artificial state usually leads to collapse. Life needs some challenge to remain resilient. The key is finding the right balance. She pulled up a holographic display showing the project's 100-year projection. See these cycles? We're not trying to make Proxima b into Earth. We're helping it become the best version of itself. The next few months brought more breakthroughs. The engineered plants thrived, beginning the long process of soil transformation. The modified storm systems began to establish more regular patterns, creating zones of relative calm while maintaining the planet's essential energy balance. Most surprisingly to the Council observers, the human terraforming team seemed to celebrate each challenge they encountered. I don't understand, Venera admitted one day, after watching the humans excitedly discuss a new acid rain variant they'd discovered. On my world, we see such obstacles as failures to be eliminated. You treat them as opportunities. Dr. Tanaka looked up from his analysis of the rain's chemical composition. That's because they are opportunities. Each challenge teaches us something new about this world. And the more we understand it, the better we can work with it rather than against it. The turning point came 6 months later, when a massive solar flare threatened to overwhelm their radiation shields. The Council observers expected the humans to shut down their surface operations and retreat to safety. Instead, they watched in amazement as the terraforming team adjusted their shield matrix to channel the excess energy into their atmospheric processors, using the very force that threatened them to accelerate their work. That's when I finally understood. Venera would later report to the Council. The humans don't just survive adversity. They learn from it, adapt to it, and ultimately transform it into an advantage. Their entire terraforming philosophy is built on this principle. Word of the project's success spread quickly through the galaxy. Soon, worlds that had been written off as too hostile for development were being re-evaluated through the lens of humanity's adaptive approach. The humans found themselves in high demand, not just for their terraforming expertise, but for their unique perspective on challenging environments. "We're receiving another request," Maya announced during a team meeting. "The Zerlak Collective has a mining colony on their outer moon. The environment is deteriorating faster than their conventional systems can handle it." "The ice moon?" Kenzo asked. "The one with the methane geysers?" "The same. They want to know if we can help them establish a sustainable colony there." She smiled. "They specifically requested our dance with it approach." The phrase had caught on throughout the galaxy, becoming shorthand for humanity's philosophy of working with rather than against natural forces. It represented a fundamental shift in how the galactic community approached hostile environments. 1 year into the Proxima b project, Maya stood again at the viewport, but this time she wasn't alone. Besides her human team, representatives from 20 different species crowded the observation deck, watching as the first permanent settlement took shape on the planet's surface. "I still find it remarkable," Ambassador Zixtel said, his crystalline form refracting the light of Proxima Centauri into rainbow patterns. "When we first met your species, we thought it was despite your hostile world you had advanced so far. Now we understand it was because of it." Maya watched as a modified storm system delivered precisely calibrated rain to a growing field of pioneer plants. There's an old Earth saying, "The oak fought the wind and was broken, the willow bent when it must and survived." We learned long ago that true strength often lies in adaptability rather than resistance. A lesson the galaxy needed, the ambassador agreed. "Thanks to your people, we're beginning to see that what we called Deathworlds were really just worlds we didn't understand well enough to work with." As if to emphasize his point, a double rainbow appeared in Proxima b's atmosphere, a sign of the changing chemistry that would eventually make the air breathable. It was a reminder that even the harshest environments could harbor beauty, if you knew how to look for it. "We're not just terraforming planets," Maya said softly. "We're terraforming perspectives. And that might be the most important transformation of all." The success of Proxima b marked the beginning of a new era in galactic development. Humanity's gardeners, as they came to be known, spread throughout the galaxy, teaching others how to turn hostile worlds into homes without destroying their essential nature. They brought with them not just technical expertise, but a philosophy that would change how the galaxy viewed the relationship between civilization and environment. As Maya wrote in her final report on the project, perhaps there was never such a thing as a death world. There were only worlds waiting for someone to learn their dance. The first sign of the crisis came from the edges of known space. Research outposts went dark one by one, their final transmissions containing only fragments of data about an unknown entity that consumed both organic and artificial systems. The Galactic Council's response was swift but ineffective. Every fleet they sent to investigate disappeared without a trace. Admiral Helena Santos stood before the emergency session of the Council, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic displays, showing the spread of what they now called the convergence. Unlike the crystalline Artaxians or the ethereal Zerlak, she didn't need environmental suits to survive in the Council chambers. Right now, that durability felt like a hollow advantage. "The entity appears to be a hybrid life form," she explained, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Part biological, part technological, operating with a shared consciousness that absorbs and adapts to everything it encounters." "Like your Earth insects?" asked Counselor Venra, who had been promoted after his work with the human terraforming teams. "Similar to our hive insects, yes, but far more advanced. It doesn't just coordinate its parts, it evolves with every encounter, incorporating new biological and technological elements into its collective intelligence." The Council chamber erupted in overlapping voices and electromagnetic pulses of distress. The various species represented had encountered hive minds before, but nothing that could assimilate technology and biology simultaneously. "How do we fight something that learns from every defeat?" demanded High Chancellor Zixtal, his crystalline form pulsing with anxiety. "Our most powerful weapons only make it stronger." Helena's response surprised them all. "Maybe we don't fight it at all." The chamber fell silent. Even after a decade of cooperation with humans, their unconventional approaches still caught the Council off guard. "Explain," the Chancellor commanded. Helena activated a new hologram, showing the pattern of the Convergence's expansion. "We've been looking at this wrong. We see the Convergence as an invader, an enemy to be destroyed. But what if we treated it like a hostile environment instead? You want to terraform a hive mind?" Venra asked, his crystalline form flickering with what humans had learned was amusement. "Not exactly, but we can apply the same principles. Instead of trying to destroy it, we need to understand it, work with its nature rather than against it." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "And I think we already have the perfect test subject." The plan was audacious. The human research vessel Prometheus had captured a small fragment of the Convergence, keeping it isolated in a quantum containment field. Instead of trying to destroy it, they proposed to communicate with it. Dr. Sarah Chen, the daughter of the captain who had made first contact with the Council years ago, led the research team. She had spent her career studying the intersection of biological and artificial intelligence. "The Convergence isn't evil," she explained to the observation team, which included representatives from 12 different Council species. "It's doing what any living system does, trying to survive and grow. The problem is that it doesn't recognize other forms of consciousness as anything but resources to be absorbed." "How does this help us?" asked Tilara, a Zorlak observer whose gaseous form swirled with skepticism. "Because we're going to teach it something new." Sarah pointed to the containment chamber where the fragment pulsed with an otherworldly light. "We're going to show it there's more to gain from cooperation than consumption." The next 3 months were a dangerous dance of carefully controlled experiments. The team discovered that the Convergence communicated through a complex network of quantum-entangled particles, a system not unlike the one humans had developed for their deep space communications. Using this insight, they began to establish a dialogue. It wasn't communication in any conventional sense, but rather an exchange of patterns, probabilities, and possibilities. The breakthrough came when they demonstrated how different systems working together could achieve more than a single unified consciousness. "Look at this," Sarah called out one day, pointing to a remarkable display. The contained fragment had begun organizing itself into distinct subunits that worked in concert rather than complete uniformity. It's learning to value diversity within unity. But not everyone was convinced. A faction within the Council argued that any attempt to communicate with the Convergence was too dangerous. They demanded immediate military action, even as previous attacks had proven futile. The debate reached its peak when the Convergence breached the defenses of a major Council world. As evacuation ships streamed from the planet, Helena and Sarah presented their final proposal. "We've proven we can communicate with it," Helena argued. "Now we need to show it the full potential of cooperation. We propose to send a joint Human Council mission directly to the heart of the Convergence." The Council chamber erupted in protest, but Helena continued. "We've learned that the Convergence values efficiency above all else. We need to demonstrate that diversity and cooperation are more efficient than forced unity." Against strong opposition, the mission was approved. The human ship Prometheus, modified with Council technology and carrying a crew representing 15 different species, ventured into Convergence-controlled space. They brought with them examples of cooperative achievements, terraformed worlds, hybrid technologies, and most importantly, the quantum neural network they had developed to communicate with the fragment. The journey was harrowing. They watched as Convergence units approached their ship, their hybrid forms a disturbing blend of organic and mechanical components. But instead of attacking, the humans broadcast their message, not in words or data, but in demonstrations of cooperative potential. They showed how different species working together had solved problems that none could handle alone. They demonstrated how biological and technological systems could enhance each other without losing their distinct natures. Most crucially, they showed how the very diversity the Convergence sought to eliminate was the source of the galaxy's greatest innovations. The response, when it came, was unexpected. The convergence didn't retreat or attack. It began to change. The aggressive expansion slowed, then stopped. Observation posts reported that convergence units were reorganizing themselves, forming distinct but interconnected groups rather than a single consuming mass. "It's evolving," Sarah explained to the Council. "Just as life on Earth evolved from single-cell organisms to complex ecosystems, the convergence is learning to value complexity over uniformity." The transformation wasn't instant, and it wasn't complete. The convergence remained a powerful and potentially dangerous force, but it was no longer an existential threat to the galaxy. Instead, it became something entirely new, a network of diverse but connected consciousnesses that could communicate with other species without trying to absorb them. Months later, Helena stood again before the Council, this time to present the final report on the convergence crisis. "We succeeded," she concluded, "not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we offered a better way. We showed the convergence what we learned on Earth, that true resilience comes from diversity, and true strength comes from cooperation." The Council's response was to establish a new division, the Department of Sinological Communication and Cooperation, with humans playing a key role in its leadership. The crisis had proven that humanity's experience with adversity had given them unique insights into dealing with seemingly impossible challenges. As Sarah Chen wrote in her memoir, "The convergence taught us that the greatest threats we face often come from fear and misunderstanding. By learning to dance with our challenges rather than fight them, we can transform potential enemies into partners in the great cosmic dance of life." The convergence remains in contact with the Council to this day, a reminder that even the most alien of minds can learn to value the beauty of diversity. And humanity, the species from a death world that chose peace, continues to help bridge the gaps between different forms of consciousness across the galaxy. The Quantum Research Facility on Mars hummed with activity as Dr. James Kumar made final adjustments to what his team called the empathy engine. Around him, a mix of human and alien scientists worked at stations monitoring the experimental device that they hoped would revolutionize interspecies communication. "Neural synchronization at 98%, reported Dr. Lix, their Zorlak specialist whose gaseous form rippled with anticipation. "Quantum field stability holding steady." James nodded, his dark eyes fixed on the central chamber where two beings waited. A human volunteer named Maria Santos and Kittel, an Artaxian diplomat. They would be the first to test the device at full power, an attempt to bridge not just the gap between species, but between fundamentally different forms of consciousness. "Remember," James spoke into the comm, "this isn't just translation. The engine creates a shared experiential space. You'll perceive each other's reality as if it were your own." The project had grown from humanity's successful communication with the convergence. That crisis had highlighted a fundamental problem in galactic society. Despite centuries of cooperation, different species still struggled to truly understand each other's perspectives. "Beginning quantum entanglement," announced Dr. Yuki Tanaka, her fingers dancing over the holographic controls. "Consciousness synchronization in 3, 2, 1. The chamber filled with a soft golden light as the empathy engine activated. Maria and Kittel's vital signs spiked momentarily, then stabilized in an unusual pattern, their neural activities synchronizing despite their radically different biology. Minutes passed in tense silence. The research team monitored every fluctuation, ready to terminate the experiment at the first sign of distress. Instead, they watched in amazement as both participants began to display signs of shared emotional states. Maria's brainwaves matching patterns never before seen in human neurology, while Kittel's crystalline form pulsed with frequencies typically associated with human emotional responses. When the engine powered down, both participants were crying, Maria with human tears, Kittel with crystalline resonances that expressed the same emotional state. Maria struggled to find words. "I felt what it was like to be crystalline consciousness, to perceive reality through lattice vibrations, to think in symmetries and resonances. It was beautiful." Kittle's voice quavered with emotion, and I experienced the incredible density of human consciousness, the intensity of your emotional states, the richness of your sensory perception. How do you bear such complexity every moment? The success of the first test sparked a revolution in interspecies relations. The empathy engine, refined and improved, became a standard tool for diplomatic relations, cultural exchange, and conflict resolution throughout the galaxy. But it was the unexpected applications that truly transformed society. On the water world of Hydrix, human marine biologists used a modified version of the engine to communicate with the planet's sentient ocean, leading to breakthrough discoveries about collective consciousness. In the gas giants of the Carina Nebula, it helped establish contact with previously unknown atmospheric beings that existed in states humans had never imagined possible. The engine isn't really technology, James explained to the Galactic Council during a progress review. It's a bridge. It allows different forms of consciousness to meet halfway, to share experiences that would otherwise be impossible to convey. The council chambers had changed since humanity's first contact. Now, representatives of dozens of species chose to attend in person rather than through holograms, using environmental suits modified with empathy engine technology to better understand each other's perspectives. High Chancellor Zixtal, who had witnessed humanity's first steps into galactic society, addressed the assembly. When we first encountered humans, we thought their greatest contribution would be their resilience, their ability to survive in hostile environments. Instead, they have taught us something far more valuable: how to turn understanding itself into a science. The project faced its greatest test when a territorial dispute between the Zerlak Collective and the Marith Dominion threatened to escalate into war. Both species had valid claims to a resource-rich sector, and traditional negotiation had failed to find a solution. James and his team proposed an unprecedented experiment, using an expanded version of the empathy engine to allow the leaders of both species to experience each other's cultural perspectives on the disputed territory. This is different from our previous tests, he warned the participants. You won't just share current experiences. You'll access each other's cultural memories, the accumulated wisdom and values of your civilizations. Are you prepared for that level of intimacy? The experiment lasted longer than any previous session, 3 full hours of shared consciousness. When it ended, both leaders emerged profoundly changed. The sector we fought over, the Zerlak leader announced, it holds sacred significance for the Marith that we never understood. Not just strategically important, their very concept of self is tied to those space-time coordinates. And the Zerlak, the Marith leader added, their need for the sector's resources isn't mere greed. Their distributed consciousness requires specific quantum fields generated by those stellar phenomena to maintain their collective awareness. We can share this space, enrich both our peoples. The resolution they crafted together became a model for future diplomatic relations, not a compromise between competing interests, but a synthesis of different perspectives into a new, shared understanding. As the engine's influence spread, it began to change how species viewed themselves and their place in the galaxy. The rigid categories of solid, gaseous, crystalline, or energy-based life forms began to blur. Species that had once seen each other as incomprehensibly alien discovered surprising commonalities in how they experienced consciousness, even as they celebrated their unique perspectives. We're not just building bridges between species, James reflected during a lecture at the newly established Institute of Xenological Understanding. We're building a new kind of civilization, one where diversity of consciousness is seen as an asset rather than an obstacle. The human contribution to this transformation was recognized when the Council created a new position, the Office of Consciousness Integration, with James as its first director. The role acknowledged humanity's unique ability to bridge different forms of experience, born from their evolution on a world that had forced them to understand and adapt to countless different challenges. Perhaps this was always our destiny, James wrote in his memoirs. Growing up on a Deathworld taught us not just to survive, but to understand. Every challenge we faced, every adaptation we made, prepared us to help build a galaxy where different forms of life could truly comprehend each other. The empathy engine became humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, not a weapon or a tool of dominance, but an instrument of understanding. It transformed the meaning of civilization itself, creating a society where the boundaries between different forms of consciousness became bridges rather than barriers. As an ancient human saying, now quoted throughout the galaxy, put it, "To understand all is to forgive all." Thanks to humanity's bridge builders, the galaxy was finally learning just how true those words could be. 50 years after Earth's first contact with the Galactic Council, Ambassador Elena Chen Santos stood in the great observatory of New Terra, watching ships from 100 different species navigate the busy spacelines above. The planet below them, once a stormy death world much like Earth, now hosted one of the most diverse populations in known space. Elena smiled at the irony. Her grandmother, Sarah Chen, had made first contact with the Council. Her mother, Maria Santos, had been the first human to use the empathy engine. Now she was about to inaugurate the galaxy's first multiversal university, an institution dedicated to sharing knowledge across all forms of consciousness. Quite a view, isn't it? Came a familiar crystalline resonance. High Chancellor Venra, once a junior observer of human terraforming projects, had become one of humanity's strongest allies in the Council. "I was just thinking about how far we've come," Elena replied. "When we first met your people, you thought we were impossible, sentients from a death world who chose peace over power. And now look at what that choice has created." Venra's crystalline form shimmered with pride. "Your people have transformed our understanding of what civilization can be." The transformation had indeed been remarkable. Humanity's approach to challenges, adapting rather than dominating, understanding rather than fighting, cooperating rather than competing, had sparked a renaissance in galactic society. The evidence was everywhere. Former death worlds, once written off as uninhabitable, now hosted thriving colonies where multiple species lived together, each contributing their unique adaptations to create sustainable ecosystems. The empathy engine had evolved into a galaxy-wide network of consciousness sharing, allowing beings of radically different nature to learn from each other's perspectives. Even the convergence, once feared as an existential threat, had become an integral part of galactic society. Its network of hybrid consciousness now served as a living library of experiences and knowledge, accessible to any species willing to learn from it. "Chancellor," Elena said, turning from the viewport, "I'd like to show you something before the inauguration ceremony." They made their way to a special exhibition hall in the university. Inside, historical displays traced humanity's journey from their first tentative steps into space to their current role as bridges between different forms of consciousness. "This is new," Venra noted, pausing before a holographic display showing Earth's geological history, your prehistoric periods. "Yes, we've been studying why Earth produced a species like us," Elena explained. "Our scientists believe it wasn't just the hostile environment that shaped humanity. It was the constant change. Our world never stayed dangerous in the same way for too long. We had to adapt not just to harsh conditions, but to varying ones." She gestured to the next display, showing human cultural evolution. "That's why we learned to value diversity so highly. Different approaches, different perspectives, they all helped us survive when conditions changed. We didn't just adapt physically, we adapted culturally, socially, intellectually." "And now you've taught that lesson to the galaxy," Venra observed. "Our own civilization had grown stagnant, you know. We had achieved great technological advancement, but we had stopped adapting, stopped embracing new perspectives." They moved through the exhibition, passing displays showing the major milestones of human galactic integration, the first terraforming projects, the convergence crisis, the development of the empathy engine, and dozens of other moments where humanity's unique perspective had helped solve seemingly impossible problems. "But this," Elena said, stopping at the final display, "this is what I really wanted to show you. The hologram showed a real-time map of consciousness distribution throughout the galaxy. Points of light representing different species and forms of awareness pulsed and flowed, forming patterns of incredible complexity. Where once there had been clear divisions between different types of life, now there were gradients, overlaps, and harmonious interactions. Beautiful, isn't it? Elena asked. Each light represents a different way of experiencing reality, a different perspective on existence. And thanks to what we've built together, they're all connected, all learning from each other. While remaining distinct, Venra added, that was your people's great insight, that unity doesn't require uniformity. The inauguration ceremony that followed was itself a testament to that philosophy. Representatives from across the galaxy attended, each experiencing the event in their own way, but sharing it through the advanced descendants of the empathy engine. Crystalline beings resonated with gaseous consciousnesses, while energy forms harmonized with biological neural networks. Elena's speech was brief but powerful. We call this the multiversal university not because it spans multiple universes, but because it embraces multiple versions of reality, the different ways that conscious beings experience and understand existence. Our goal is not to find one universal truth, but to learn from the many truths that different perspectives reveal. As she spoke, she couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. Humanity had emerged from a hostile world, not with the desire to conquer, but with the wisdom to understand. They had faced the challenges of their death world, not by becoming harder or more aggressive, but by becoming more adaptable, more cooperative, more empathetic. The true legacy of the Deathworlders, she concluded, is not that we survived our harsh world, but that we learned from it. We learned that strength comes in many forms, that adaptation is better than domination, and that the greatest power of all is the ability to understand and connect with those different from ourselves. After the ceremony, Elena returned to the observatory. The ships above had arranged themselves in a spectacular dance of light and motion, a spontaneous celebration of unity and diversity. Among them, she could see the distinctive forms of convergence units, their hybrid nature now a symbol not of threat but of possibility. Your grandmother would be proud, Venra said, joining her at the viewport. She helped make first contact, and now her granddaughter has helped make first understanding. Elena watched as a group of young students, human, Artaxian, Zrulak, and a dozen other species, entered the observatory, their environmental suits equipped with the latest consciousness-sharing technology. They moved together with the easy familiarity of friends who truly understood each other, despite their radical differences. That's the real legacy, she said softly. Not just surviving a death world, but learning from it how to help others thrive. Not just making contact with different beings, but learning to dance with them in the great cosmic ballet of consciousness. As night fell on New Terra, the lights of civilization twinkled both above and below, each one representing a different way of experiencing the universe, each one contributing to the grand symphony of galactic consciousness. And at the heart of it all was the lesson humanity had learned on their harsh but beautiful world, that the greatest adventures come not from conquering the unknown, but from understanding it. The legacy of the Deathworlders would continue to shape galactic civilization for generations to come, not as warriors or conquerors, but as teachers, healers, and bridge builders. In choosing peace over power, they had found something far greater than mere survival. They had found a way to help all forms of life dance together in the cosmic symphony of existence.